All right, I've got about 4 after, so we're going to go ahead and kick this off. Yeah, so welcome everybody. We're going to, I just saw somebody post in that somebody shared the Zoom link. Totally cool. Bring them in. More the merrier. And yeah, so we've got a great lineup today. We got the folks from Evolytics, Jay, and some folks from his team are going to present on all things color and design. So super excited to hear what they're going to talk to us about. So Jay, take it away.
All right, thanks, Sean. Yeah, so we've got an Evolytics hosted user group today. So we're actually in the office. I don't know if you can hear the train going by outside. We're down in Parkville, or up in Parkville. So myself and then Liam Huffman will be presenting, and then we had Caitlin McCluskey-Fitch on the docket, but she's unable to make her presentation today due to a family emergency. So myself, Liam, and Alex Gunnarsson, who started yesterday, will be presenting her presentation for her, this design speed tipping. And so, yeah, we're all in the office. It's good to be back, but we couldn't find a conference room, so we are up like in the attic. We're gonna be shuffling some seats, so there might be some delays between presentations, but please bear with us. All right, so on to the content. Go ahead and share my screen. See it, Liam? Yeah. Okay. This set up. Chat up. All right. Thank you, everybody. So today I'm going to be presenting a presentation called Expand Your Palette, Making Custom Color Palettes in Tableau. So to start off with, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jay Ferris. I'm the Senior Data Viz Manager here at Evolytics now. I'm responsible for the Tableau practice here, the Data Viz practice, guide clients through the Data Viz process. Been in Tableau 4 or 5 years now, certified desktop associate. One of the co-leaders of the Kansas City Tug, and do a lot of trainings as well. And then in my spare time, I like to rock climb, mountain bike, do yoga, slackline, anything outside that's got a little bit of adrenaline with it. Okay, so what are you guys going to learn today? This is a presentation for Tableau developers. So we're going to go through how color helps your visualizations. And then we will get into Tableau color palette types. I'll just go from like front to back on how they're constructed, what they're used for, the different kinds of them, everything you need to know about color palette types. And then we're going to go through Viz Colors, which is actually a tool that we've just created at Evolytics to help you generate custom color palettes. And then a couple of use cases where we'll solve some challenges with color palettes, some technical challenges. Okay, so how color helps. So effective coloring can enhance your visualization and help you narrate your story. And it does this, and I'm going to highlight 3 different ways. So cultural association, highlighting, and contrast. And so we'll go through a palette for each one of these, and then I'll show you an example. And all of these examples are actually provided by my co-host, Liam Huffman, today. These are all on his public Tableau profile. He's done some nice work up there. So I just thought I'd use his. So this one leverages cultural association. So this is a visualization he made called the Alphabet Baby Name Game. So you can find the popularity of your first initial and then what year it peaked, and you can see the top name for each letter over time. You can kind of see a graph here, and so he's used baby blue, baby pink, and then some gray. So 3 main colors here, and in America, baby blue represents baby boys, baby pink represents baby girls. And so it's very easy to know with the pinks, pinks are females, blues are males. So know your audience though, right? So this might not be the case in another country or another audience. So you've got to be discerning about what colors you're using for what audience, but they can be very powerful if you use the appropriate colors. There's a lot of good documentation out there on different cultures and what colors mean throughout them, like, reds or brown. Red in America is kind of like, love or anger, passion, but it might need something different, in Asia. So you can use those to your advantage. And this one uses a discrete categorical color palette, which we will cover later. All right, so the second way how color helps is highlighting. So Liam here has used a gradient of yellow to highlight the points of interest, and gray for states that didn't change much, and then yellow for states that did change a lot. So this visualization is bee colony and beekeeper losses over time. And so we're using yellow to highlight, where a lot of bees and beekeepers have lost over 2016, 2017. And so the deep yellow draws our attention to those states. This is a nice hex map representation of the United States. We can see where those are at. The gray kind of fades into the background, right? Like we're not concerned about those so much. He wants to highlight the yellow. And again, this is a very simple color palette. This is, yellow. It's a gradient yellow sequential color palette with gray. Really nice and simple, clean, easy to visualize, easy to read. The last one we're going to look at with how color helps is contrast. So Liam has used a diverging color palette here to show contrast, like higher or lower from a baseline. There's also some color association, cultural association here with blue being cold and red, orange being hot. Like we already associate those colors with temperatures. So again, simple palette here. We have blue, we have orange, we have gray, and some shades that are in between. And using a diverging color palette in Tableau to go from, below the baseline is blue and above the baseline is like this reddish orange. And this is a pretty cool one. So this is rising global temperatures. He has a baseline of, I think, 1850 to 1900, the average temperature in that time range. And then I think over there at the 3 o'clock is where it starts. And we can see where it goes lower. And then we get into the more recent decades and it goes higher. He's also got a bar chart on the left showing the decade, like not the decades, but the kind of the periods in history. We can see that the temperatures are indeed rising. So this is a really cool one, really good use of culture association and a diverging color palette here. Very well put together, the radial bar chart, which always looks really cool. All right, so now that we kind of previewed some visualizations and how color can help you and different methods for it, let's get into just color palettes in Tableau. So color palette types. The first is we saw, I said, used a categorical or discrete color palette. So these are regular color palettes. They're just groups of colors. Now, usually they have a common theme, like a brand or a color that's kind of the center of them. So these are available with a discrete field on the color marks card. And sequential color palettes are also available with discrete fields since they're going from low to high. So this one, I've just put region from the sample superstore data set onto color, and we get the default Tableau blue and orange first, and then we get kind of like that pinkish red and then a teal. So I'm actually going to go through and do a demo here of everything that's available inside the color palette. And so if you open up let's go here. So if we open up here, I've put region on color. And if we click on color, the color marks card and click edit colors, we get a lot of different places we can go here. So we can see that we're on the color palette of automatic. And then we have all the color palettes that come with Tableau. These are all the discrete ones from Tableau 10 to Tableau Classic 20. And then we get some sequential palettes that just have different shades of the color that they're that's labeled orange, orange, gold, blue, hue, circle. And then we get some custom color palettes that I've created or that I've brought in that we'll get into later. So if you want to change your palette, you can do that. You can click assign palette and it's going to change the colors. Click apply. If you want to pick colors, we can pick there. You have to click on the color and then pick what we want it to be. So you can manually assign your colors. You pick apply, it's just going to start at the top and then go down, I believe. But we can go even further with this. So say, this green, I don't know, it's kind of ugly, but maybe I want a different green and I don't like any ones in here. So I can actually click on that. I can double click on it and you get a more expansive menu of all your colors. So we'll start at the far left here. And this is going to be different on a Windows and on a Mac. I think on a Mac you get this. I'm not sure you get this one on Windows, or the colored pencils, but it should be mostly the same. You can actually just pick in the color, wheel, whatever you want, and you can change kind of the brightness of it, saturation here, go over. So you can just do that, not terribly exact, but you can just kind of like say, hey, I like that color. You can come here and we can get more exact. So we have a grayscale option where you can kind of pick your grayscale if you're looking for a gray color. I've never actually used this feature, but if you want to use gray, go for it. Rgb sliders. So this is probably pretty common for what people use. You're using a hex code. And so red, green, blue, and as we change them, they all change, right? And so you can see the hex colors changing. The red is the first two characters, green is the second two characters, blue is the third two characters. So usually we'll come in here and input a hex code that you get from a style guide or off the internet or something like that. We can do CMYK. CMYK, there we go. So cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And these are percentages. So these are another way that we can formulate colors. A little bit easier to see. It's just all percentages. You can get percentage values and adjust them if you want. Then HSB. So I like this one actually for creating my own custom colors because you can just change the saturation and the brightness. So let's say I want to go back to like this green here. I'm gonna come back to my HSB. If I like this green, but I want like a brighter one, I can just use that and just take up the brightness. Or if I want it less saturated, I can come down here and make it a little bit more gray. So you can use these two, saturation and brightness, to change the color, like the saturation brightness, but you're not changing the actual color of it. So it's pretty easy. You can use percentages here. And then another thing I've noticed with RGB is this little gear icon. It actually, if you open it up, every monitor displays RGB in a different way. And so you can see what this color will look like on this is every monitor I think I've ever connected to on this machine. So the Dell ST2410 is one of my home ones. So we can see that the hex colors actually change. Like that monitor is going to render that color as this hex code. And then a Samsung monitor is going to render it as that hex code. So this comes into play if you're using like the eyedropper tool. Depending on what monitor you pick it from, it's going to render a different hex code. And I figured that out while I was doing this presentation, trying to get the custom colors to match, and it was weird, but figured it out. They're all the same color, they're just a little bit different. So those are those four. I mean, come over here, and Tableau has some palettes in here. There's web safe colors that gives you the hex codes. If you want to use those, and then we have like crayons that you can pick from. If you want to take yourself back to the 64 Crayola days, back in elementary school, and get that honeydew or get that bubble gum into your viz, you can find it in here. We have developer colors. These are classic for like the developer toolpad in your browser. And then Apple has just their like base colors, I guess. We can use the spectrum. So this is similar to the color wheel, except we've got the black already involved. And so you can kind of get the dark versions of it. You can drag it around. And then we've got the colored pencils. So similar to the crayons, except really cool visual. You can pick whatever one you want. So all this is cool, but I think the two most powerful features are the hex color. You can input hex color, or you can use the eyedropper. And this is what I use most of the time. Is if you have a logo or like some other color, maybe you get like a document, like something from a client or a stakeholder, and like, hey, I want to use these colors. You can just go grab it. Like I can grab like this color in the show me actually. And then now I have that color and I can set it. And now my east is that color. So it's actually, I think it's very similar to the one in here in the hue circle. But the eyedropper is awesome. You can use it from anywhere on your screen. Okay. All right, so that's everything in like the color menu. So let's move on to quantitative color palettes. There's two types of quantitative color palettes or continuous color palettes. There are sequential and diverging. So these are different, but they will appear if you have a continuous measure placed on your color marks card. So the difference is sequential palettes usually contain just one color, and they go from light gray to the fullness of the color you have selected, but this isn't always the case. You can have multiple multiple colors inside your sequential color palette in the TPS file. And then the ones you saw earlier in Tableau had like 20 different shades of the color. But its defining feature is that it's always going to use the full color range of the palette you have provided, which means it's always going to go, the maximum value will be the deepest, the color itself that you're seeing there on the right. And the center will always be at the middle of the value. So we can see that the range here in this example is 3024 to 330,007. So the middle, it's going to find the exact middle and take it, this, whatever formula it uses in the automatics, the middle color is going to be right here. And you're not going to be able to dictate where that center is at. So this palette is good to use when your values all start at the same point and they all go up. So we're using like sales right here. We're not going to have any negative sales. So they all start at around 0 or a little bit above, and they're going up. So we use a sequential color palette to use color to encode our sales value. So let's go over and look at what that looks like here. So I've just dropped sales on my color. And same thing, we can come in, hit edit color. We can change the opacity as well, which is just like the transparency of it. We can edit the colors. So automatic, we're going to get blue is automatic. And we can change this though. So we can double click right here and we get all the same options that we would get with like a discrete palette. We can use the eyedropper. If you want to just go grab a color, you can put in a hex code if you want to change it. We can grab this green from the pill, hit OK, hit apply. And there we go. Tableau's generated it off that. And now, but notice it's changed to custom sequential. So this is now no longer a palette that you can reuse. The custom is specific to this field now. So we're not going to be able to use this palette unless we have to go grab it again. It's not really that scalable. So custom sequential or custom diverging. If we change it back to like this green, now it's this green palette that's built in. We can apply steps here as well. If you want to split your colors up, if you have like 5 values, you want to be like distinct between them, you can do that. Usually just leave it at automatic. Okay. Diverging palettes. So these have a little bit more flexibility, and you can choose to use the full color range or not, and the center value can be modified. And you can also, in the interface, you can pick 2 colors. You can pick that left color and you can pick that right color. But this palette's good to use when your values diverge from a common point, which is not necessarily 0. Like we saw in Liam's viz, like he chose a baseline temperature and then higher or lower than that, he set, whatever degrees Fahrenheit or Celsius was there, that's what he put as the center. And then anything above that was going to be blue, anything below that was going to be orange. So in this screenshot, we're using profit. We're charting profit. We can have negative profit. So this is a good case for a diverging palette with our center at 0. Anything above 0 profit is going to be blue. Anything below 0 profit is going to be orange red. But notice I'm not using the full color range here. So Tableau is going to plot the intensity of each color proportional to the value. So it's going to use, since the positive value is higher than the lowest negative value, we're going to get the deep blue at the top end of the positive, but we're not going to get the deep like sienna color, burnt sienna at the bottom, because our orange, our negative value isn't as far away. So I would be careful with that when you do that. If you're going to use, so notice if I change it to use full color range, this value isn't really proportional to what we're seeing here. It goes from like a light orange and the last one's like super dark. So it looks kind of funny. So I would let Tableau do its thing unless you have a specific use case for wanting to use the full color range here. And same thing, I guess we go back in there. You can alter this color. I want it a little bit bluer and a little bit greener. Hit OK, hit apply. And then maybe I want this red. I want this one a little bit more red. There, hit OK, apply. There we go. So it's a cool palette. All right. Brian, I can answer some of those questions at the end. So this is cool and all, but where do color palettes come from? So they're just in Tableau, right? But where are they? So actually, they're in your Tableau workbook. As of version 10.0, they used to store the default palettes in the TPS file, which is in your My Tableau repository directory. And then you have a preferences.tps file. And after version 10.0 or as of version 10, they removed all the custom color palettes. Those are now just embedded in the XML of the workbook itself. And then any custom color palettes you can put into your TPS file. And so how this works is every time you open Tableau, it goes and grabs whatever TPS file is in your directory and loads the custom color palettes from there. Now, if you have any palettes that are already being used in the workbook, those are saved within the workbook at that point. But if you were to delete that sheet that it's used on, those palettes will then go away and it'll load whatever's in your TPS file. So if you want to add custom color palettes, you need to close your workbook and then reopen them for that to take effect. And make sure that you open this with a text editor. Otherwise, it'll try to open it with Tableau and you will get an error. So I've just defaulted the program to open this with Sublime or whatever text editor you have on your machine, so that if you double click on it, it opens it in a text editor, which is what you want for this. Okay, so let's just look at the structure of a color palette in Tableau. So this is XML format. So we have a container, we have containers. So right here, we have the open container of this is a color palette. That's the type of container. And then the palette has a name. So this one's called the Daisy palette. This was actually just one of the palettes we had at Evalytics. It's just looks like very Eastery or springy flowers. So the name is Daisy palette and the type is a regular. It's just a regular palette, which is categorical or discrete. So regular is the term that is used in the XML to load this and associate it with a discrete field in Tableau. And then we have color containers here. So these are where the hex codes come in. We have color, and then your first color, and then end container. And then I've overlaid this so you can see what each color is. So all your colors are just, down here in rows. And then when you want to end your palette, and just those are all the colors I want in my palette, you just close your container. So that is the structure of the palettes. So that was a discrete. So let's look at a sequential structure. So again, we open it, color palette, we have a name. When I make palettes, I like to make the names very descriptive so I know exactly what they are. So this one is a blue sequential using the hex color 0060FF. And the type, so Tableau knows how to use it, is an ordered sequential. And then here we go. So we have two colors, DDE 6F4, and then that 0. So basically, I think what I did here is I wanted like a lighter blue. And so I went into Tableau and I made this, I took this blue and I turned down the saturation, I turned down the brightness, and I got the hex code for this. And then I just put it into this palette. And so I have like a starting and an ending. I wanted something a little bit different than what Tableau was generating for me automatically. And I also was able to like save it as a custom palette and reuse it across the workbook. So it wasn't a custom one, like in the terms of Tableau, it was one that I have made already. Right. So then sequential. So this is what that looks like in Tableau, actually. So we can see I've put sum of sales on the type and then have it. So it's a nice, looks pretty good. So let's look at diverging XML structure. So this one, same thing, color palette name. I put red, gray, violet. So the three colors that I've used in it, and it's ordered diverging. And you could actually write notes in your XML as well. So you can write what colors they are if you forget. So this one's red, this one's gray, this one's violet. So this one just goes from this kind of like deep red to this purple. And this is what that looks like in Tableau. Again, we're not using the full color range here, but they're really easy to make. You just need to put some colors in. Tableau will extrapolate in between and give you the continuous range that you need. Okay, so this is cool and all, but it's very manual, right? We're making XML structures. So there has to be a better way, right? There has to be something that can do this for us. We can just input some colors and then get what we want. So there is. So we made a tool called Viz Colors. So this is not a new concept. Interworks has a tool. There's a bunch of other tools out there too, but ours is pretty cool. So it features, you can upload an image, you can choose your base color, you can select charts to preview, so you can see what these colors look like on our different chart types. You can view our recommended color palette choice for the chart you are using. You can learn color theory on why certain palettes are appropriate in certain use cases. You can view all the different color palettes, and then you can download the XML already formatted and just copy and paste it into your workbook or your TPS file. So here's just an example of the color theory we have for complementary color palettes, so split complementary colors, create balance. However, because these colors aren't true opposites on the color wheel, the impact can be less jarring. So let's actually take a look at the tool. So this is Viz Colors. So right now it's Tableau color palettes. I think we're going to add functionality for Power BI and for Python coming up soon as well. So we have our Evolytics base color as a blue, but let's say I have an image that my stakeholder gave me that I want to use. And let's say it's this really cool shot of Kansas City Union Station. So it extracts, what it does is it extracts the 6 most prevalent colors in your image and then gives them to you in a palette. And it's like, I like this blue right here. This kind of like, I forgot the term for it, but it's kind of like a low level blue. And so we can see what that looks like on a heat map. We can look at it in a bar chart. And so there we go. I like that with the purple and the green. So this is a triad. So it's recommending that with this base color, we use this triad color palette type. And a triadic color schemes use 3 colors that are evenly spaced on the color wheel. So red, blue, and yellow are examples of triadic colors. So we have blue, kind of red, and that's kind of this green. So we can create high energy, vibrant designs. Or we could use a line chart. So same thing, split complement on the line, or like a scatter plot. So we can actually see all the palettes. So we can see the split complement, the triad, the monochromatic, and the diverging. So let's say, I like that, but let's try another color. Oh, this one's kind of pastel-y. This one's a deep green, this one's a light blue. And you can actually start picking in here. So like, oh, I like this green. And then it'll change it to that. Like, oh, I want to use this as my base color. So you can kind of go down a rabbit hole here with what color you want to use. And then you can preview it. Like I said, this is a heat map using monochromatic. So again, monochromatic is like a sequential color palette. The monochromatic is like the color term for it. And in Tableau, it's sequential. So it's really good for a heat map. There's a nice bar chart. So we can do that. You can look at all the palettes. You can see why we chose it. You can look at the color theory behind it. You can do a lot of things. And then you can copy your XML. So you can just click copy MX to the clipboard. It's copied. I'm going to go into a text editor. I'm just going to paste it. Gives you everything. I'm going to change my view to XML, which is at the bottom where X is. And now we can see that it actually gives you the entire TPS file. So it generates the header, the XML version, workbook, and preferences for you. So if you have nothing in your TPS file, you can basically just Control-A, Control-V, and it will just paste over everything and then save it, close it, open your workbook, and then it's in there. So what you get with it is that you get the image palette of the image that you uploaded. You get the complementary, the split complement, the triad, tetrad, analog, sequential, and diverging, and they're all named, Viz colors, and then the base color that you're using there, and then whichever one they are, right? So it's easy to find them, easy to know what you're getting out of it. Yeah, Notepad++ if you're on a Windows, I think that's what I used to use before I got to Mac. The Sublime on Mac I think is pretty good, or Atom. All right. So what was I at? Okay, there we go. So yeah, that's how you get your TPS file, your XML out of your TPS file. So again, so one clarification with ours is that our sequential palette puts the base color in the middle. And so this is what you're going to get with Tableau. If you use a color you're going to get at the end, ours will actually go deeper, and that color will be more in the middle, and you'll get not as light here. So it's a little bit different. It's going to be up to you, your preference, what you want to use, but all the other palettes are pretty cool too. All right, so to review on palette creation, so you can use Tableau Desktop, inside. You can use the interface to open up the color, existing color, change the saturation, change the brightness, change the hex color. It's quick, but it's not scalable. You can't easily reuse those. They're specific to that measure or that field on that sheet. So you can manually create your custom color palette so they are reusable and put them into your TPS file. So it's easy if you know your hex colors or they want it to be simple. But again, you can only produce one at a time. But the color palette generator, so this is great for extracting from images and getting a lot of color palettes at once. So it's really easy. I have a logo that I need to make color palettes for, plop it in there, export it. You've got 6 or 7 different color palettes that you can use in your visualization. We are going to keep expanding functionality. I think we're going to try to get like an eyedropper tool in there. We're going to keep going with it. So look for updates. All right, so getting into use cases. So now let's look at how we can solve some issues with color palettes, some technical issues. You might recognize this first one, goal-based color palettes. So performance analysis using conditional formatting. So this is one that we actually did a few years ago at the last tug that we hosted at Park U. It's just a great use case for color palettes. So we want to color code our values it's basically conditional formatting, right? So you're in Excel and you're like, hey, I want this to be green if it's above this to be orange within this range, and this red to be here. So for example, imagine our business goal is to be more than 10% profitable. We would want to identify non-profitable product categories as red. So like 0 and below, or below 0. Intermediate profitable categories like 0 to 10% is orange, and anything above 10% is green. So we could do this by writing a calculation that used sum of profit, if it's less than, equal to, or greater than. But it's a pain. It doesn't scale very fast. It doesn't scale very well. And you have to manually assign colors. If those values don't exist in your data at the time of the calculation, you need to change it so you can assign the correct color. It's possible, but it's just not the quickest way, and it's not reusable. You have to create a calculated field like that for every single measure. So what we can do is we can actually create a custom color palette that has steps. So we utilize the step functionality, and we put the colors that we want in there, and then put the quantity that we want, and we can assign it. So again, I like to name the palettes very specific. So this one is profitability 12 step, lets us know how many steps we're using, and then the range. So minus 0.01 to 0.11, and the type is going to be an ordered sequential. And we can put in notes so we know that I want to start at red. So anything below 0 is going to be red. And then anything from 0 through 0.1 is going to be orange. So we can see that these 10 steps are going to be orange. Then anything above 0.10, so 0.11 and above, is going to be green. So we have a palette created that gives us the colors that we want in the steps. And this is how we enact it. So we can put our measure on color, and we go in and assign our palette. We change our steps. We set our start and end points, and then we get what we want. So let's go look at that. Where did my Tableau go? There it is. Goal-based color palettes. Okay. So again, if we have profit ratio, so here we go. So this is like the default, right? We have profit ratio, which is profit over sales. And we want to put that on color. So by default, it's going to recognize what I just did. So let's see what we get from the start. So by default, this is probably what you would get. You get the default color palette. So we want to come in. We're going to go find our custom color palette that we made. So profitability 12 step. And we're going to say, hey, I want to do step color, do 12 steps. Just use that. And we can set our start and our end from minus 0.01, 0.11, and then we can hit apply. And then there we go. Below 0 is going to be red. In between 0 and 10 is going to be orange, and then above is going to be green. And if we just change that to a square, then we get the whole thing colored in. So pretty simple. You just kind of have to know what you want to do. And it's very similar to conditional formatting in Excel. You just create a palette instead, and then drop it on there and assign it. Because again, we could use this with any measure, right? It's not specific. We didn't create a calculated field. We created a palette that can be used across multiple measures. Okay. So the next use case is coloring select measure values. So this is something we might run into after we've done the first one. So we can use custom color palettes to encode only certain measure values. So how do we color only certain ones? Let's say we have our profit ratio again, and the stakeholder wants a table with sales, profit, and profit ratio, and they want us to color just the profit ratio column. So we can do this if we create like placeholders and like put our measures in there. But there's an easier way, because using measure values is how we would intuitively do this in Tableau. So we use our measure values, sales, profit, and profit ratio on them. So if we want to color by our measure values, if we just drop measure values on our color, it's going to take the lowest value out of all of our measures and the highest value out of all of our measures and create a diverging, like a range for a diverging color palette. So it's not going to be specific to any one measure. So the first step we need to do is use the feature to use separate legends. So this will split out each measure into its own legend for us so that we can control each column and the color range that each column has. So if we click use separate legends, now we get something like this. So it gives us a sequential palette for sales, gives us a diverging palette for profit, and a diverging palette for profit ratio. So Tableau is kind of smart, those are probably appropriate for what we want. But again, we don't want to color sales and profit. We only want to color profit ratio, but we can't remove like the coloring from these. Like it's set, it's colored by measure values. So like we can't take these off. But what we can do is we can go ahead and color our profit ratio. So we can use the same color palette we just used before, right? Really easy. Throw it on there, adjust it, and we're good to go. The next step though is we can actually just use a custom diverging palette that's just black to color our other column. So we can set it to black on one end, black on the other end, step color of 2, and then it colors all of the values the same color. So we're kind of just like tricking Tableau into saying, the range is this and it's all black. So we can actually make a color palette, and this is what I did. I've made 2-step black and 2-step white for this. So I can just pick it. I don't have to like go in and change a diverging, and I can just go in and select it. So in hex codes, black is 6 zeros and white is 6 Fs. So the black would be used if you wanted to change would be used here if you wanted your label to be black. And you could use white if you wanted to change it to square and have the background be white, and then you could color in this one. So they each have their own use cases. And you can see over here, we're coloring a square instead of just a label now. So some of sales is white, some of profit is white, and our background is white. These backgrounds are colored by that. So you can see what we did here, and you can edit these. So these are custom diverging, or you can come in and select if you have a 2-step black, you can create that. If you just did something like this to get there, actually be diverging, you can just come in here and put in your zeros, isn't it? You can just do that, step color 2. There we go. Either way, if you want to reuse it though, it's really easy to create the color palette and then just assign it. 2-step white, 2-step black. Okay, all right, one more thing that I added to. So something else you can do is if you have, I've been using this lately, if I have like a color that I'm just going to use throughout my visualization, let's just do that. Let's just do sales. It's a lot. So like you want to, so in Tableau, if you come in and you like say, you have a color that your client always uses and it's like this purple. Okay, so it's not one that you can pick out of here. You have to put it in and you can get it here. But every time you create a sheet and all your visualizations are going to be the same color, you have to come in and manually select it. You can just go in here and this I do is like purple. like that, hit OK. And then you can just put that on color. And then you can just pick. Oh, I don't have it anymore. If you know the hex code, you can just come in here, select it or whatever. Right, if you know it. And now everywhere that you need to use this color, so if I had like a, I was doing quantity instead, as long as you just throw this on there, it's going to be the same color. So you can use it all across your dashboard. It's really easy. It's just a nice little trick that saves you from having to go in and like select it each time through this menu. So a quick tip. All right, so let's look at some other resources. So Tableau itself has some really good custom color palette resources. It tells you all about the TPS file, how to edit it, how to create custom categorical, sequential, diverging, and then you can assign default custom palette to dimensions. So I've actually done this. I'll assign default colors to certain dimensions and measures. And then here's all the discontinued ones that were in 10.0 before. So if you want to get like the original traffic light or the hue circle and the cyclic ones, so like that, they're all in here. If you want some nostalgia. Other resources are recently released and very good timing was the Ken Flair-Lodge released DataFam Colors, a Tableau color palette crowdsourcing project. So if you go here, this is absolutely ridiculous, but somebody put out a tweet saying, hey, we should get all the cool color palettes together. And so guess what Ken did? He made a workbook that has like at least 100 of these 93 palettes right now that are really nice. So I'm going to let that load, and you can come down here and you can see all of them that he's made. So Mark Bradburn and Neil Richards have put together some really nice palettes that have some really cool names. There's Ocean Current, there's Rubber Radish. I really like this one. I like the blue and the orange, the Pumping Spice. Yeah, these are really cool. So a lot of palettes in here. And if you come into the workbook, I think you have to click on it. So there's like a loading page. So now they're up to 119 palettes. Looks like from 24 members. So you click on that, you can go into the dashboard, and inside this dashboard, there are all of these palettes. It's loading all of them. So I guess the bigger this gets, the longer it's going to take. There we go. California Girl. Parachuting, nice. Oh, the Dodgers. Yeah. So you can see all of them here, right? They're all laid out for you. And of course, you're able to download them. And this downloads the TPS file. So this will get you all of them. You just copy and paste that in, and you have all these palettes in your workbook now. You can also see what they look like on dark backgrounds, like clicking this little image right here. This button right here will actually give you a form if you want to submit a color palette. You can fill out a form. I think it's a Google form, and then if it gets approved, then it's going to get put in here. And this last button is for like filters and like about the dashboard and stuff. So let's see if these look like. Yeah, so you can kind of see which ones look good on the dark background. So you can look by date submitted, sort by date submitted. You can look at the palette types like categorical, diverging, and sequential, who submitted them, and then just the names of them and when they were added. Color names generated using the color name list API. Cool. So yeah, that's really awesome. A lot of nice palettes on here. If anybody of you are doing Iron Viz submissions, yeah, here you go. You can grab a palette from here. Take your Viz to the next level. And of course, we have some blogs on this. So the first blog here, how to make a stoplight 100-point index. So this shows you how to do something we do quite often for our financial services clients, which is create a custom color palette to encode 100-point indexes. So if you're not familiar, these are basically like you're comparing two values and multiplying by 100. It's basically a percentage change, but using an integer instead of a percentage. And over 100 is increasing, you know, under 100 is decreasing year over year. And we color code those based upon ranges. So there's two in here. There's actually all the colors I think you need, the XMLs are in here. So yeah, right there. So you can get the palettes for this. So there's two ways to do that, right? There's like above 100 is good or above 100 is bad. And they're kind of the inverses of each other. So there's a whole tutorial on how to do that. This is a really good one if you want to bring these metrics to your organization. And then also there's a post on specifically what I showed earlier, like everything you need to know to do this kind of thing, with the XML palettes as well in here. So yeah, there you go. That is custom color palettes in Tableau. Let me check the questions. So Brian asked, do you have any advice on mapping measures to sequential color palettes using other than linear scales, for instance, using data quantities? So there'd be like bins. Is that kind of what, is that how you interpret that, Sean?
Yeah, that's how I was thinking about that. Is you could bin that, or you could do a you could create based on the measure. You could create a percentile calculation, and then you could do it, and then use that percentile on color, and then change your step color to 4 steps, and that would be would be quartiles, or 3 steps would be tertiary, or quintiles, or whatever.
Yeah, it's a really good solution, percentiles. And then yeah, you can, like I said, you could do like the goal-based stuff too, where you create a palette and you could assign like, if you did like, even if you like 10, like the deca, whatever 10 is, right? One for each one, right? If you wanted to, they can go from like every 10%.
Yep.
Any other question? Oh. Why do you need a 12-step palette if you only need 3 colors? So because basically how that works is we have 12 values. We have like below 0 is 1, and then 0 to 10, it's going in like, if we do it in steps, then we can map an individual color to each decimal. And so it's very linear. It's like 0.06 is this color, 0.07 is this color, 0.08 is this color. And then when we get to 0.11, it's this color. Anything above that is just going to be that color, anything below that. So with my stoplight indexes, they're actually on a 212-point scale, because I take it down to like the second decimal place for those. So because of rounding. And then I also want, like, if it's null, I want it to be gray. And so there's like a special color in there. The very bottom color is gray. And that's anything that's like below 0.05. So you just have to play with it. But those are all, I think they're in that tutorial. But that's why you need that. Because if you're going to use the steps, you need to assign it a direct like value. And then John asks, are the new Tableau color palettes and deletion of some older color palettes based on any ADA requirements? There are some colorblind palettes in that, in Tableau, that post, that link. They're like the old ones, but you can just find, you just Google like colorblind palettes. I think there's a different term for it, but you should be able to find some that work for you that are different than just, they're probably cooler than what Tableau has even. But the default palette that Tableau has, the orange blue, is ADA like friendly. That's why they use it.
Yep.
And you could actually you can use like reds and greens, but they have to be like very deep, I think, right? They have to be like super deep.
Yep, that's right. And then so the old color palettes were deprecated in version 10. So whenever Tableau did their full UI, full ground from the ground up, that's when they created all the new color palettes. So like all the Miller Stone and Uriel Stone and all those crazy color palettes, those were all introduced in version 10.0. So I'm trying to find the blog post. They did a blog post that actually that actually dove into why they changed those color palettes. So if I will keep searching, but if they if I find that, I'll definitely share that.
Yeah, I was looking for it. I couldn't find it either because I was trying to figure out when. Yeah, like all this image was there. Okay. All right, so that is it for me. Next up is Liam, and he's gonna give a presentation centered around design. And then after that, we'll do some speed tipping. Liam, you want to take it away?
Yeah, thank you. Let me get set up. Sorry, I've been working on one computer screen for over a year and a half now, so learning how to use a dual monitor again is apparently very difficult.
Yes, no worries.
Okay, there we go.
Yep. There we go.
Awesome. Great. So like Jay said, my name's Liam Huffman. I work at Evolytics. Been here for going on 2 years, but have about 3 years of experience in Tableau, as well as my Tableau certification, certified analyst. And yeah, so like Jay said, I'm going to be talking about basically how to elevate our designs and our dashboards, that elevated UI without an elevated effort. During this, this is probably going to be leaning more towards moderate or advanced Tableau users. There's some tricks that new users can still pick up in here, but it's definitely going to be a little bit more technical. We've got some assumptions that you already know what a dimension swap parameter is. You've worked with date granularity adjusters before. You've created a CY or a PY field, and you've got some frame of reference with table calcs. Nothing fancy, just the quick table calcs. But what we hope to gain from this is new ways to combine unrelated chart types to leverage what they provide for the end users, how to create basic chart types through new methods in a way that's going to elevate the design for the end user, as well as just generating some user interaction. So easy ways for people to click on and change values. Cool. All right. So let's get started. So to begin, I have 2 sample dashboards. This very first one for the Evolytics profits per order. We can't use, we don't want to, use the Evolytics name here, but Evolytics is really concerned about their profits per unique order. So they've created a pretty simple dashboard. We're looking at, the bands at the top, those big ass numbers showing our KPIs of profit orders and profit to unique orders. We've got a trend line to show what's going on, as well as a bar chart to show a little bit more of a granular view into how those specific segments are performing. And, this is very useful. It'll answer most questions that a stakeholder is going to have for you. It's not complicated. We've got some filters. We're letting people choose if we're splitting by category or by segment. We can change the graph to look at monthly or weekly profit or orders. This is a pretty standard what we would normally see on when we're helping out a client. This is a type of dashboard we would inherit. But what we want to do is take this and make something a little bit better, a little bit easier for the end user. And so we might create something like this. We've got a little bit clearer index at the top. We've got a single line chart as opposed to 3, reducing that, the amount of information we need to digest upon viewing the dashboard. And we've condensed the bar chart as well to just 1 instead of 3. Those just really help the end user to understand, to ingest that data a lot better. But there are lots of other changes that happened. And these are the 7 that we're going to be talking about. These are the 7 major changes between A and B that we're going to look at and understand what the changes made were and a little bit of how to do them. So the very first change we're going to look at is the profit index bubble. When we started, the profit index was simply shown as a percentage text field. We've got some color on there, to show, oh, red is bad, right? We're dropping in our profits. But there's not a lot of information gained from it. Additionally, it's not exactly colorblind friendly. If no one can read red, then what's the point of having that red as a color? So a way to elevate it is to turn, instead of just a straight text field, turn it into a pill and include a shape to indicate the direction that your profits are going. This may look super complicated. It takes just as much time to build the text box. This is a very simple view. We just changed the chart type from a text to a line chart. If we look at our measure values up here, it's really just a 0 to 10. Change it to line, put the measure name on path, and we get one complete line. We get that pill with the rounded ends. We've got this min6 field. This is just to offset the shape position. If we go to, if we put it in at 5 for our label, then it's weirdly off center. So we keep it to 6 so that we get a good centering on it. And the shape is indicated. We've got a profit index shape field that is actually looking at, oops. It's just looking at if that table calc is greater than 0, equal to 0, or less than 0. When it's greater than, we'll have an up triangle. When it's equal to 0, it'll be a square. And we have negative growth, we're going to have a down arrow. We put that on the shape and add our label. And now we've got a much easier to read, much cleaner, and much more useful index bubble for the end user. Whenever we, so to go back to our dashboard, so we've got our supporting, our main KPI, but now we want to focus on our supporting. What are the actual profits year to year? So that we actually gain some knowledge of what that change represents. So originally, again, we just had a simple text field splitting out CY and PY, putting our profit for each one in there. It's useful, right? We're not actually changing any information shared in the elevated. We're just cleaning it up a little bit. So this elevated version, we've got the numbers outlined. We've got a little bit cleaner headers than just CY and PY. It just looks better for the end user. It makes sure that their attention is drawn to the correct place, to those two big numbers. To do this, we just created this minimum 5 field and made it a bar. If we look at this, if we change the color to like gray, this is just a giant bar chart with two columns for that CYPY. We just hid all the indicators and adjusted the axis to go from -1 to 6. So it was nice and centered the entire time. Like that, change this back to white. I also went above and beyond a little bit and made this detailed header for each column. So it's not just, oh, this is CY, this is PY. I wanted the end users to know when they look at it without having to reference anywhere else on the dashboard that we are looking at Q4 in 2021 and comparing it to Q4 in 2020. This is done by basically taking some values, converting them to strings, and trimming them away. So if we look at our detailed field, you'll see that we do truly just take the date granularity of our field and make it a string value and slap it on there, right? It's nothing complicated. It looks weird because we normally wouldn't take a date, convert it to a string, or to a string, take only certain values from it. But it's a great way to create a cleaner interface for that end user without losing any context in the process. So now one of the bigger changes is definitely this bar chart, or this line chart, excuse me. We've gotten additional functionality with this. We still have our granularity, quarterly, monthly, weekly, but we also have a show changes indicator now. So if we say yes, we're going to get these little shape indicators that are going to tell us year over year how we're performing that quarter. We can hide them because sometimes they can get pretty busy, on a monthly view. That's going to be a lot of indicators to be looking for. and we don't always want those indicators there. So how do we get a bar or a line chart from a simple line chart to something much more complex? Again, luckily, it's not a whole lot of work. What we're going to do, instead of just putting profit on here, for example, we need to put a measure swapper field on there. If you've used a dimension swapper, this is going to be very similar. So our measure switch, we're just doing a case statement on a measure switcher parameter, just a string parameter with 3 different values with all the measures we want to potentially view by. And just a simple case statement of when that value, when profits, then give me the profits. When unique orders, give me the unique orders. We replace the profit that was originally in the rows with that new measure swapper. And we're able to, at any point, switch between which measure we're looking at without having to add in 2 additional graphs. Additionally, we've got this CY index bubble. So this is just an if statement. So if our show index bubbles, that little toggle here, our little parameter, if it's true, then go ahead and present a value. Otherwise, keep it null. Because all this really is the exact same chart duplicated. You'll see that these are tracked the exact same way. So when we go dual axis, we are literally combining the axes so that we have an overlapping shape on top of the line. I also probably need to synchronize it now. There we go. So that's a really easy way to add in just some extra, details to the view, give your clients a little bit more of an understanding of what their data actually looks like year over year without having to include an additional PY line when we're already splitting by the segment. Then when we move back to our dash, the other big change was this bar chart. We went from 3 to 1. And this is a really big change. This is pretty useful. The bar chart was taking up a lot of space, right? Too much information to digest at once. So how do we get from 3 bar charts to 1? The nice thing is there's basically no major change. The biggest thing is switching from just profit to your measure switch field. That actually allows the dashboard to swap between the measures quickly and efficiently. We also did add in these Gantt bars. So these Gants are actually representative of the PY profits in that same time range. These Gants just add some additional context for end users. So we kind of see how are we performing compared to next year to give these, percent changes some actual context around them. The PY field and CY field are dual axis. Even though we have an odd number here, the best way, whenever we have 2 fields next to each other, they will automatically go to the dual axis because they are right next to each other. And we change our PY type from bar to Gantt. And Gantt is just going to make a line where that value exists. So now we're able to see that home office last year, if I can hover over it, there we go, is it? Oh, that's the wrong one. But yeah, so it's going to at least show you where the change came from. Oh, I think it's because I need to synchronize. There we go. So we know that PY last year was 83. We're up to 116 now. That's a roughly 40% increase. So we've taken that original where we didn't have the context of how we performed last year. We've added that in. And on top of that, we've made it so that we don't need 3 bar charts. We only need the 1. Now we get to the kind of newer stuff that I added to the dashboard to give it some extra usefulness. The first thing that we added was this section E, this quarterly unique orders by segment. We don't really have a header here. We understand that it's a trend of profit by quarter based on the context clues around it. There we go. Had to get one last thing out of the way. But what we wanted to do was make sure that in the sheets that we have some way to switch between consumer, corporate, and home office. Whoops, that's one other tip that's coming up later. I spoiled it a little bit. But this one, what we've added is now you have a highlight. So you can click on consumer, you get consumer highlighted throughout the sheet. The other nice thing about this is that it removes the need for a legend box. Legends can be kind of clunky. They're hard to organize and get in a way that you like. I always struggle with whether I want to include them in the dashboard or not. So these headers are a really great way to get the exact same work as the exact same information that a legend provides in a more useful place. It's super simple, right? We just drop in our dimension switcher value into columns, put our dimension switcher on text and color, and then we get the same colors throughout the dashboard for these segments added here. And we can swap through it very quickly. And like I said, we'll get to it a little bit later, but it is just a highlight action. So we get some additional usefulness out of this. You'll also notice that when I change my granularity, we're going to see the title here change. So now we've got monthly profits by segment or monthly categories by segment or monthly profits by category. This is super easy. Any sheet, you can access all your parameters on the dashboard or in your workbook from the title of any sheet. They all exist right here. Drag and drop them in to make sure that your users are getting a clear story on what their dashboard is every time they change something. Again, that makes sure that they don't have to refer back to the filters or something or try to remember what they changed 2 dashboards ago. It's all clear at the very top for them to know exactly what we're looking at. Here we've got some custom headers for the bar chart. Originally, we had profit year-over-year change, orders year-over-year change, profit per order year-over-year change. Again, they do their job. They make it clear what that is, but there's nothing dynamic about it. These all have to be hard-coded texts. It just isn't, it doesn't look as nice. So we want to elevate that and pull in the same information we had up here in our supporting KPI boxes to our bar chart headers. So to do that, it's super simple. I created 2 minimum 1 placeholders to create 2 columns. This way they each had different values as well, because we want different headers for each one. And then I just edited the text on each min 1 to say exactly what I wanted them to say, adding in, can I borrow the charger? Adding in, you know, the parameters where necessary to get the text to show up with all the relevant information. Again, nothing complicated here, right? We've done this type of stuff all the time. It's just a way to think differently about it and make sure that the end user is getting the best experience possible. And then, of course, there are some general changes to the overall layout. We've, changed some text. We added some instructions. We obviously added some interactivity. And those are all really easy ways to make a stakeholder client think an old dashboard is brand new and amazing. Just make sure that everyone is, make sure you have the interactivity in there so that people can actually use it and learn from the dashboard. So to go over quickly, just some of the updates that we made. As far as the visible ones, we added the instructions and filters as necessary. This is, useful for making sure people navigate the dashboard the way you intended. Sometimes people just wander into a workbook, have no idea what's going on, and begin using it. We want to make sure that we limit their confusion upon first entry as much as possible. Additionally, make sure those global filters are in a global location. Whenever we're building for a client, we normally consider that the top of the dashboard or the left side of the dashboard. Everyone kind of understands that those are where filters that affect everything exist, and put those other, very specific filters next to where they belong. And then we use some padding to change the background. I think we'll go over this a little bit in our next presentation, but the padding can be really helpful in generating white space as well as backgrounds. You'll notice that if we go into each of my text boxes, I've used outer and inner padding in most of them, just as a way to make sure that everything is lining up exactly how I want it to. We're getting these nice white backgrounds without having to use any additional like containers or floating blanks. We just have them right next to it with a background applied and our inner and outer padding to shape it exactly how we want. And then we added some of those invisible updates. So something like that dimension value highlight with on select, right? Whenever we click on one of these and getting that highlight. The other really big one is whenever we hover over profit or unique orders, our entire dashboard is going to change to reflect that specific measure throughout. And again, this is a really easy process. It's just a simple parameter action. We know we've got our parameter for measure already. And so what I did was created 3 additional fields. This profit per unique order, profits, and unique orders. They are literally just profit per unique order, just written out. The reason we do this is that we can generate a parameter action for the dashboard. Parameter action, since mine was based on a text field, hold up. So since mine was initially built on a text field, we had to add in, I've added since I first created this. Let's clear out all of these. Most of them shouldn't impact it. We do want that profits UO and the profit UO index bubble. We select which sheets have that field. The field that we're using is this profit unique order, and we're having it impact the measure switcher. We have it on hover so that we just have to run over it with our mouse, and then it'll update the entire dashboard. Now, you'll have to do this for every measure that exists in your dashboard, but it's a quick and easy way to get more usefulness, to get more engagement from your end users without having to add a ton of labor in on your end or adding in yet another dropdown for them. Just one more thing to eliminate off the dashboard. And those are 7 really simple, easy steps that don't deviate much from your standard process to getting a complete dashboard out. All right. And it doesn't look like I have any questions. Lots of conversation, yes. Cool.
All right, thank you, Liam. That was really good. He's going to post that on Tableau Public soon, probably today or tomorrow. There's a lot of information in there. He just did a demo overview, but if you want to get in there and dissect that, you can pull out a lot of those formulas and see how everything's created and try to use some of those in your dashboards, your day-to-day. All right, so as I said earlier, there's a change in plans. Caitlin was not able to make the presentation today, so Liam is going to kick her presentation off. We're going to do the best job we can. Caitlin delivers it really well, so we'll try to follow in her footsteps. Alex is going to step in for a few slides, and then I will wrap it up. So I'm going to turn it back over to Liam. He's going to kick us off with some speed tipping as well.
Yeah. Right.
Let's roll.
Oh, whoops. Which screen? Okay, cool. All right, let me find. There we go. Yeah, I didn't set it up right. That's okay. I don't really need the presenting tips anyway. There we go. All right. So normally this would be presented by Caitlin McCluskey-Fitch. She is one of our managers here at Evalytics. She leads the Denver TUG, or is co-lead of Denver TUG, also certified desktop associate, has a great Tableau public. And so we're going to do her presentation, which is normally 20 tips in 20 minutes. We're going to see if we can do that as best as we can, but we are not quite as quick on these like she is anymore. So Today, we're going to learn a couple tips to improve your dashboard layout, design, and interactivity. Those are the 3 main focuses. Don't worry about taking notes. We're going to be seeing the packaged workbook, or you can see the packaged workbook on her Tableau public. She also wrote a blog on her own blog page that summarizes everything as well. So let's get started. We're going to hop first into layout. So her number 1 tip for layout is use the design for device type common denominator. Lots of design for device type common denominator. There we go. Before you start building in Tableau, right, we always want to choose our size. I think most of us probably stick with a fixed size and just make it expand to whatever we need it to be, but there are other options out there. Make sure that whenever you do design for the device type, you keep in mind all the different ways someone may be viewing your dashboard, right? Like most of us know that our clients or end users are going to be on a computer, but if they're on a phone and traveling, it might be useful to have that mobile desktop view. So first is fixed, my preference as well. It doesn't change, it doesn't flex depending on what device or dimensions it's being viewed at. This makes sure that everyone sees exactly what you anticipate and what you want them to see. It is good to note that dashboards with a fixed size load faster because they're more likely to use a cached version on the server. They don't have to load and generate a brand new image each time. Dashboards with those variable sizes have to be freshly rendered for every browser request to make sure that they fit on the device being used. The other 2 options, automatic and range. These are used a little less frequently, I think. Automatic will just resize it automatically depending on what screen it's displayed on. Generally, you want to avoid this option because it means that since Tableau is deciding how to lay out your dashboard, it may not be laid out the way you want, right? We always avoid tiled dashboards for that reason. Tableau normally doesn't have a great track record of actually sizing it the way you want. Range, again, not one that we would normally use, but if you know you're designing for 2 different displays, they're going to need the same content, then they're really useful. Again, something like a mobile dashboard that can also be viewed on the computer. Tip 2, use the device preview pane to test layout on different devices. So yeah, there's this great thing there's a great thing in here. If we go to a dashboard, we can choose the device preview and it'll give us this grayed area of what's going to show up based on whatever desktop or whatever size we choose. This is really helpful in making sure you know exactly how the end users are going to be seeing your dashboard and what kind of view they would get when they first open up your workbook. Tip 3, design on a grid. This is one of my favorite tips. The grid is super helpful. If you're in a workbook, hit G and your dashboard will populate with some graph paper. I didn't know about the G before. The way that I've always known how to do it is going into dashboard, show grid. And then once you do that, you actually have some options within that grid. You can change how big the squares are. So maybe 20 pixels is too tiny. You never really have any views that line up on a 20 number. Maybe they line up on like 25, right? We get a little bit change. Maybe they're 50. They're a lot bigger, right? This is really helpful on making sure that if you're especially on a floating dashboard, that everything lines up cleanly and nicely. Tip 4, use floating or tiled depending on the use case. I think Jay and I are both avid tiled users. We prefer using tiled because everything resizes, or things don't resize automatically. You're able to control how large they are before, the Tableau takes over and smushes everything together. If you have to add something in, floating can be an issue because you have to resize everything that's floating, whereas tiled, you pop it in, everything resizes or won't lose their size depending if you have the sizes locked. Floating, doesn't matter, things are still going to change on you. She has a good point, though, to start items as floating. It is nice to start on a floating dashboard so you know exactly where things will go and what they'll look like as soon as they hit the dash, without having to just guesstimate on what that tile is going to look like. Tip 5, use layout containers. Yeah, this is so important. Layout containers let you group related dashboards so you can quickly position them. Think about this as if you were in PowerPoint. We were to drag and highlight everything, right? And then move it all at once. That's kind of what a container is going to do. Let you move anything that's been selected within that container back and forth in different views. There are 2 types: horizontal, which puts things side by side, and then vertical containers, which puts things above and below. Tip 6, sketch out your layout containers before building. So instead of just doing a sheet 1, sheet 2, we're going to write some stuff in the corner and this is my dashboard title. Think about it more in the container layout. How would you actually build out this dashboard once you're building? It's great to say that we want sheet 1 and sheet 2 to go here, but then we might get stuck as we try to figure out how to group things together, where to put things, or how to insert that container. Build out the containers first so you understand what's happening, and that'll make it a lot easier to input your views into the dashboard. 7, name your objects in the layout panel item hierarchy. Depending on what version of Tableau you have, this may not actually be available, but they did recently, I think in 2019 or 2020, add in the ability to name objects in your hierarchy. So this can be really helpful if, for example, this looks like kind of a busy dashboard. No, I guess it's not too much. She's already named them as well. But yeah, we've got a lot of containers going on in here. If we wanted to try and find something, it's a lot of clicking and sorting to get through. So by renaming everything, we already know what to look for. If we know that we're looking for the map, then we don't really need to go into the scorecards or the header. We know that it doesn't exist there. So we can go immediately into the bottom charts and find that map. To do it, you just right click on like the container and you can rename that dashboard item. Tip 8, adjust container placement with shortcuts. There are lots and lots of shortcuts for dashboarding, more than we will even cover here. But some really useful ones is you can double click an object to get the container that it's in. So this sheet, right now, if I try to move it, nothing, it won't be a great experience. I think it's untiled. Yeah, I'll move it to floating. I try to move this. Maybe I want to move both of them, right? I don't want just that map moving. So what I can do is double click, and that's going to pull up the actual container. So now I can select the container and move it around. You can also use your mouse or your keys, directional arrows, to go up or down, left or right, 1 pixel at a time. This is really helpful to fine tune and make sure that the containers are exactly where you want them. Tip 9, use the layout panel to move floating objects with precision. Yes, we should all be getting comfy with our layout. There we go. Within our layout, we have our padding that we talked about during my presentation a bit. You can change your background and border. But if we have a floating object selected, we can actually change the X and Y as well as the width and height of that object directly. So maybe we only want this container to be like 500 width. It's very tiny, but we're able to adjust it immediately without having to just guesstimate how big it is based on how we've dragged it. Tip 10, use the T key to toggle between dashboard and layout panels. So if we're on our dashboard and we want to switch from the layout pane to dashboard, we normally have to click into them. We hit T. It's just going to go back and forth automatically without having to click anything. Just got to hit that T button. There we go. Yeah, tip 11. I think so tip 11, make use of white space with padding. You'll notice that when I was going through my dashboard, everything had some space between them so that you weren't just throwing a bunch of information that looks all continuous and related. Way easier if we use that padding. The outer padding provides additional space beyond the border and background color of objects, while inner padding sets the spacing between object contents and the perimeter of the border background color. So if we hop into it, white space, there we go. So yeah, so the outer padding, if we change the outer padding on this dash or on this sheet from 4 to 10, you'll see that the top drops down and that we get more of that gray background. It's gonna be easier if we go to 20. Right, more of that gray is showing up. The inner padding is changing how far away from the top, bottom, in or out, left or right that the data is being shown. So if we change our top from 10 to like 200, right, it's going to squish it all the way down. We haven't changed anything in our dashboard. We've only changed that inner padding on where it begins. There we go. And tip 12, swap sheets. This is also a relatively newer addition to Tableau. So whenever we're in a dashboard, instead of having to delete, drag something back on, looks like she has a bunch of hidden sheets. Let's unhide. Nope. Okay. So once they're on here, right, you have to delete them or something like that. Let's just delete this one. Instead, what we can do is swap. So we've got a sheet in here. We like where it's positioned. We don't want to, you know, mess around with it any further, but we put in the wrong sheet. You can just choose this little curvy arrow and that will swap out the sheets without you having to change anything yourself. That is a lifesaver on big dashboard builds and updates. And now we're going to kick it over to Alex to do some design tips.
All righty, thank you, Liam. Let me get my screen pulled up here. Okay. Sharing now. Okay. Yeah, we will walk through the design tips now. Okay. The first design tip is to format at the workbook level. From here, you can set your fonts for different text elements across the workbook and set defaults for lines. I really like to use this feature for turning off grid lines, and I will show you in the dashboard how to do that. So we're going to go up to format here, and actually let me show you. If I click on a different dashboard, you can see that there are grid lines on this one as well. So if I just want to get rid of those grid lines in one quick step, I can go to format workbook, and then you can change the fonts here, or in this instance, we want to change the grid lines. We're going to click on grid lines and then click on off. And that's going to remove the grid lines here. And then if we were to click back here, you can see the grid lines have been removed. Tip number 14. Second design tip is using fonts based on the final location of your dashboard. Fonts are a pretty complex topic within the Tableau ecosystem, so consider this your 1,000-foot view on the matter. I worked on dashboards in the past and used a font that I thought looked very cool. When I published it to Tableau online, it looked good on my end, but then I got a few comments from end users stating that the font looked a little weird. After digging in deeper, I realized that it was an issue of not using a Tableau web-safe font that was present on all computers. To ensure that all font will work when published to the server, online, or public, it must exist on all systems where the viz will be authored or consumed. It must exist on your desktop computer as well as the desktop computers of those who will be viewing your workbook. It must also exist on Tableau server, online, or public. What this means is that using a really common font like Arial or Times New Roman gives you the best chance of compatibility across the board. If you're using Tableau server, you can use a custom font by installing on your Tableau server instance and making sure the font is also installed on your end users' desktops. If you're trying to do something like your brand font, that is probably already installed. Again, this is a more complex topic, and I highly suggest checking out the article from the Florilago twins that are included in the resources that we will share out. And then here's just another slide on that tip 14 for the Tableau server. Specifically, you can make any font web safe by installing it on your Tableau server instance and the computer's running Tableau. This next tip is a sort of fun one. Get creative by designing in an outside platform. Take a look at this awesome example dashboard from Sarah Bartlett. Clearly the fonts she's using are not Tableau safe. And you may be wondering how she built this cool design in Tableau. Well, she actually didn't. Almost all of her dashboard was brought in as a background image. Doing this allows you to get really creative with your design. It does take a little bit more time than just creating something in Tableau. But I would encourage you to download package workbooks of some viz of the days and see just how many of those do this. And I think you may be surprised how popular this method is. Our next tip is to incorporate icons. You can use icons in a variety of ways, including as your menu or navigation buttons, your about or help buttons, or just to illustrate a point. Caitlin's Iron Viz submission in 2020 here was on the history of the dietary supplement industry. She incorporated icons throughout the dashboard, like here inside the donut charts. You can find icons in a ton of places on the internet. A few really good resources are FreePick and the Noun Project. Just be sure when you're downloading them to download them as PNG to retain transparency, and make sure you do any editing on them before you bring them into Tableau. Tip 17, it's great to use images in your dashboard, especially as transparent backgrounds. 2018.3 brought new updates to this feature and made it much more straightforward and customizable. And we will look at a quick example here. So here, the first thing you're gonna wanna do is bring in an image. Before you bring it in, you're gonna wanna make sure you do all of the editing, like cropping or adjusting transparency before you bring it in. And then you'll bring it in as a tiled object. You can center this if you would like, but I kind of like the $ in the corner here. Then you would bring in your worksheet. Oops, I don't want to do that. Let me bring it in as a floating object. And you can see here, this worksheet has a background right now. So we're just going to adjust that. We're going to go to format, shading, and then we're going to change the background to none. And there you go. You have your picture as a background and then your floating worksheet right over top. This next one, tip 18, our final design tip is to use blank objects or text boxes to create quick section dividers. I'll admit that for a while I would create shapes outside of Tableau and bring them in as images. However, as you guys, if you've done this, it's pretty cumbersome and you can do it a lot faster with objects. This is an example from one of Caitlin's Workout Wednesday submissions in 2020. She uses text objects in this dashboard. However, blank objects will work as well. And if you haven't done it already, this challenge is a great one for using tiled containers. So to get started, you drag either a text or a blank object into your viz, and then you would adjust the height as necessary. And let me here. So here up at the top here, this is an object. And then if we go to our layout, you can see we made sure the height was 5 and we wanted the width to be the same width as the dashboard. And then whatever color we would want that line, we would adjust the background. So I believe that was the last design tip. We will move on to interactivity.
We're gonna do some musical chairs here. All right, so interactivity. So Liam kind of went over this one earlier. but it's, create a parameter that your user can toggle either dimensions or measures with. I'll just briefly touch on this one since Liam went through it. Start working dashboard. Here we go. The same thing. We have a measure that you can visualize. You could also put a parameter action on these to we have some of the same. We have total orders, total sales profit ratio to drive this parameter as well. But again, you're just going to create a parameter with the strings that you want with your measure names. And then you can go into, let's use this sheet as an example. So Caitlin has called it the measure selector. So we can come in and look at, case statement for when my measure selector parameter equals sales revenue, then sum of sales, profit, sum of profit, count of orders, so on. And then you can even, so Sean, you referenced this earlier, she has taken care of, for the most part, you can't do it on an axis, right? But you can change the labels. Let's just turn labels on here. So as we change from total orders to profit ratio, she's got it in here. So in the tooltip, you can see the percentage sign. So she actually has a prefix and a suffix. So we can see on the suffix, she's assigned a percent sign. You could just do you just only need this one actually, you can do it else, null. But percent sign when profit ratio is selected, and then her prefix, she has done dollar signs in front of sales revenue and sales profit and average discount. So profit, yeah, she has those on she has them inside in here in her label, sorry, in her tooltip. So we can see the prefix, the measure selector, and the suffix right here. So that's pretty cool. Again, you can do that here, but you can't do that on the axis. That would be nice. That's what Sean was referencing earlier. All right, next one, Vision tooltip. So save space on your sheet by using Vision tooltip. I actually use this a lot now. It's really handy for saving space, exactly what she just said. Let's go back to working dashboard. So Vision tooltip, essentially, if we hover over here, she has a trend chart for the measure that we have selected. So sales profit over time. She actually has two here. We have the trend chart, and then we have the total orders as well. So let's see how she did that. We can come in here. Let's look at our tooltip. To get those in there, we can see the sheet name. She's actually called this one Vision tooltip, and then this one total orders. And then you can specify the width and the height. And you get those in there by going to insert and then sheets. And then you get a list of all your sheets that are available to be put in. These are grayed out because these are already in here. You can't put them in there twice. But what she's doing, I think those sheets are actually hidden. So let's find them. Let's unhide her sheets. Let's find the Vision tooltip one.
You have to unhide from the map. So on the actual on the map worksheet, unhide from that worksheet.
We can see what sheet.
It's business called Vision tooltip.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways.
Hey Jay.
So what happened? Oh, total orders. This one's in there too. Okay, so total orders. This is in there. So we can see that when we have this as a Vision tooltip, there's actually a tooltip set action put on it that lets us know there's filters being applied from another sheet because this is a Vision tooltip. So if we come back into here,
hey Jay,
you can see that total orders, and then it's actually applying these filters as well. If you want to stop filters from being applied, you have to basically create a field and put it on your filter shelf like a string value, and then put that on your other sheet so that it transfers through. Because if you can see here, we can put filter equals all fields. You can specify a certain field, but there's no fields. So it's kind of a hacky way to get around applying your filters. But in this case, we want all our filters, right? We want, if we hover over Nebraska or South Dakota, we want South Dakota to be filtered on our order sheet, right? So our total orders is 9994, but then we hover over a state, we get that specific states. So it's just filtering with your dimensions that are on your tooltip, your viz.
Hey Jay.
Another one is give end users an easy option to download. We all get this request, right? They want to download screenshot or download PowerPoint or PDF or some version of your dashboard. And so you can actually now make a button to do that.
So if we come over to dashboard, you can do download. I'm just going to drag a floating one on here. Edit button. So what do they want to download? Crosstab, image, PDF, or PowerPoint. And then you can manipulate that. So what Caitlin's done here, she's done a little download icon, and we're all familiar with that, what that means. That's going to download to a PDF. And you can do a tooltip. So she has download this dashboard. I would probably put to PDF, make it clear exactly what's going to happen. They hover over it. They can see that's what's going to happen when they click that. And then let them know how fresh the data is. So this is one we use in pretty much all of our dashboards to let our users know with the last data update time. So she has that here. So that's going to be done in a sheet. So we can go to a sheet, and the easiest way to do that is in the title. So you can come in and you can put insert data update time. And so that's what this is right here. So that's just going to give you the last time your extract was run. I'm not sure if that's available on a live connection. And if so, it would just be when you loaded the dashboard. Yeah. So this is mainly used with extracts to let you know when the last extract was run. And we usually will put like last update and then like next update, you know, tomorrow, or updated daily or something like that, right? So when it's supposed to, that way they know if this is like a couple days old, like, oh, this is supposed to be updated daily and it's 3 days ago, something's wrong. And then we'll actually use this in conjunction as well with like a, you know, like a little email button or something like contact. If, you know, it's out of date, you know who to email, then click a button and or a Slack prompt or something like that. I think the last one is use show hide for anything really. She's got explanatory videos as her example. So this is the show hide containers. This is an awesome functionality as well that I've been using to hide filters or extra even visualizations to like overlay a visualization on another visualization if you want to do it in a different way. So let's look what she's got here. Let's go to the Workout Wednesday. So she's got a button that is an image, and it's a play button, and it's tied to this video. She's got a web page embed of Andy Kriebel's Learn How I Use Layout Containers. Basically, it's this dashboard, I think, maybe, but you know, you can click on that, and it's a fully playable video. So if you want like embed a user guide or something in your dashboard, then you can put something like this in there. So again, to create this, you just need a floating container. So let's just drag out like a vertical container. Let's put, I'm just going to put a text box in it. It's going to say, you know, it's called video. All right. And if we select this and we say add show hide button, we get a show hide button, and the default is like this X. If you hold Option and click, that works in your dashboard mode. So we can see that video is being shown. If I click that, it goes away and I get a hamburger menu. Click it again, it shows up. So this, you just have to have a floating container, and then you have this button available. You can put the button anywhere. You can edit it. You can do an image button. You can do a text button. You can format it for item shown, item hidden. You border, background, tooltip, whole bunch of options. You can get pretty, you can't do custom colors in here with the background, which frustrated me. I don't know, what's the border? No, oh man, that must be new. Something, there was something where I couldn't manipulate something. Maybe it was the, oh, it was the text. It was a text button. And this, I couldn't change the color here on a text button, yeah. But yeah, so really cool use case for the user video. Awesome that you can just play it embedded. All right, so getting into tip resources. I think this workbook is posted. Liam, can you post her profile in the chat? Yeah. We'll post Caitlin's Tablet public profile as well, because this workbook is on her. Oh yeah, that's right, Sean. Unhide viz and tooltip sheets in the worksheet. Yeah. This workbook is on her sorry, been a long day. So layout containers, white space and padding. She's done a good job of collecting data or different blogs and stuff for what she used here. icons, backgrounds, parameters, using tooltip. Yeah, a lot of good stuff there. So let me go through if there's any questions. Good, Nathaniel. Glad we could help you out with it. Yeah, the date update's great. Yeah, PowerPoint. I'll make buttons in PowerPoint all the time and bring them in icons. If you want to manipulate, you just duplicate and change the background and stuff. Yeah, swap sheets, containers. Yeah, I've got a really good presentation on containers that I might do soon. It actually uses that Workout Wednesday. The one that she has is like the best use case for Workout Wednesday. This thing, I actually did an internal training using this Workout Wednesday. It was really good. Yeah, okay. No other questions. I will stop the share. Okay. Sean, you wanna?
Yeah, awesome.
Back to you.
So that was good.
Muted,
Just
or, you know, I'm muted.
there we go. So yeah, that was really good. One thing that was brought up about fonts is also the thing that's gonna also vary is whether or not your server is on Linux and if you have any Mac users. So there might be some additional issues with fonts. So just stick to the basic, just stick to the Tableau fonts, stick to Arial, stick to, Georgia, stick to those common fonts and you'll be all right. Or if you have a custom font, just make sure it's installed everywhere. Basically, that's what we got there. So anyway, no, that was really good. I learned a lot. I learned the T button or the T dashboard shortcut for the toggling the layout and dashboard panes is pretty awesome. So I'll be using that one too. All right. So yeah, we don't have a whole lot else. Thank you so much to Jay and Alex and Liam. That was great. So learned a lot. Lucas, you got any parting words?
Yeah, I was just going to say some great tips. I had mentioned just between us, Sean, I think a few meetings back that I had just found out about the rename of the dashboard objects, and I was mind blown by it. So I hope some people have taken that as a good tip as well. I build a lot of sheets, and that helps quite a bit in objects. So really good tips. My toddler agrees. He's going to be on the recording, so I'll shut up here before it gets too nasty.
There you go. Awesome. We love it when the little ones watch as well. So cool. All right. We do not yet have a date for July, but we will get that. We're going to get that. We're going to get that figured out and get that invite out for you all. So be on the lookout for that. We do know that we will not be having a meeting in August. The majority of the committee is taking August for a vacation. So we'll have a meetup in July, and then everybody will take August off, and then we'll get back to it in September. But with that, thanks so much. It's always great to share and chat. And be sure and check those resources out, because there's some pretty awesome stuff in there. But see you all later. Have a great month.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.